Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is Wednesday night, 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. It's November the 17th. I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And I have the link in the chat room that I wanted to talk about tonight, and glad to be able to do these shows and keep doing them. It's been almost a year for me. November the 22nd is when I first started doing Blog Talk Radio last year. And so it's been, we're getting close to a one-year anniversary here. I just had no idea that I'd be doing Blog Talk shows this long. You know, I was thinking I might do them for a couple of months or something, but I want to thank everybody who's tuning into my shows. You know, there's like 15,000 shows listened to now, and I just really appreciate everybody who's taking the time to be here to listen to my shows, because I do a lot of shows during the week, and 10 to be exact, and you know, I know so many people just must be tuning in all the time. So thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. I really appreciate it. And for passing the information on. It's just great. Thank you very much. So we'll get right into tonight's topic. I want to look at adult survivors of child abuse. It's an overview paper from the Public Health Agency of Canada, www.phac-aspc.gc.ca. And you can just find it. It's under the National Clearinghouse on Family Violence, Adult Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse. It's an overview paper that they did, and it's quite interesting to look at. It's very, very sad. I know so many people who are survivors of child sexual abuse, and, you know, if you know me, then I'm included in that. I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse myself, and, you know, so many people deal with these issues, you know, related to the abuse that they suffered as children, and it's a horrific life sentence. And, you know, we've got to stop child abuse of all types, right? Not just, we've got to stop it all. We have to stop all child abuse and neglect, right? And it's a life sentence for these children out here, you know, if they aren't killed and murdered at the hands of their parents or caregivers, or, you know, if they actually survive the abuse, they go on to a lifetime of a lot of problems, unless they get some real help and, you know, or can find a way to help themselves, you know, whether it's self-help or getting some help, right? And so it's just so important that people do whatever you can, you know, to get that help, right? Reach out and get some help. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist or anything like that. I'm a private citizen paying to do my own shows. And I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and then that's a volunteer position, which I love doing. And, you know, working side by side with a lot of people who really care and who really want to stop child abuse. We are all volunteers. And, you know, a lot of us work around the clock. Really, we just have to sleep, and some of us have to work, you know, to support ourselves, right? But we do what we can with the time that we have, and there's so many people who actually do support us. So thank you, everybody out there who's supporting Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows. You have to listen with at your own discretion, really. My shows are very much sensitive, and that's because I'm not sugarcoating it or minimizing it. You know, I'm talking about abuse and all abuse-related injuries. So it's a very sensitive topic, and if you feel the show might bother you, then you have to do the right thing and turn it off or whatever. Make that decision for yourself, and because you're really ultimately the only one who can know that. So you have to listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, an adult who's older who can help you make up your mind whether you should be listening. I don't know how young the people are who are listening to my shows, and I just think the children should be protected at all times, right? When there's a chat room present, when children are online, you know, you got to know that there are literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people online at any given time, men and women, trying to get a hold of children so they can hurt them, you know, sexually use them, whatever, kill them. You know, there's just a lot of sick people out there. So you have to know how to keep yourself safe online. And so I ask all people who are under the age of 18 to make sure that you have permission to listen to my show. Thank you very much. So we'll get right into this. And I popped the link into the chat room, and I have a good friend in the chat room who's typing away. And Stormchaser, thanks very much for being here. Again, thank you so much. And I was just over on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, and I do that on Wednesday nights as well as Monday nights. I have my own show right after that. So I've got a good friend here in the chat room. Thanks very much for being here. So I want to get right into this topic. This is, you know, I do talk a lot about child sexual abuse, and this just happens to be another, it's an overview paper that I found very much some good information for people who, you know, maybe don't know a whole lot about what happens, you know, to children when they become adults and the adult survivor issues of child sexual abuse, and also people who have survived it and who have been through it or know someone who has. It's good information for everybody, right? It's just called Adult Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse Overview Paper, right? It says, what is child sexual abuse? I'm reading right from the page, and you can go there on the link there. You can just read along with me if you like. I always add my own stuff in there, and that's why I ask people to listen at your own discretion, because I'm talking about the whole issue of abuse, right? It says, although there are many descriptions of childhood sexual abuse, for the purpose of this document, it is considered to be the use of a child for any form of sexual activity or behavior by an adult or adolescent. It is a betrayal of trust by someone who has power over the child. And it says, who is an adult survivor of child sexual abuse? It says, any adult who was sexually abused as a child is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. The majority of statistics in this document refer to the abuse of children under the age of 17. Sexual abuse occurs in all communities, ethnic backgrounds, religions, cultures, and social and economic classes, and is experienced by both males and females, right? And that's just the whole issue, you know. The stats out there, I mean, the stats are what they are, and they're done by studies, government studies and whatnot, and we know that abuse is underreported. That's the sad fact. But the stats say that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused in some way under the age of 18, right? That's horrible. I don't know about anybody else, but 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused in some way under the age of 18. So whether that's unwanted sexual touching, you know, molestation, exploitation, rape, you know, it's absolutely horrific what people are doing to children. And 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys will sadly be victims of child sexual abuse under the age of 18. And the sad thing is that 90 to 95% of abuse, especially child sexual abuse, happens within the home. So it's parents, it's grandparents, it's uncles, it's aunts, grandmas and grandpas, cousins, moms and dads, you know, the parents' boyfriends or girlfriends or partners, you know, friends of the family, right? And sometimes other children will abuse a child, right? Anyone can be an abuser, just so everybody knows. You know, lots of grandmas and grandpas get busted for child sexual abuse too. And people don't think often that women can be abusers, but sure they can. Anyone can be an abuser. It's a choice they make. It's a choice they make. They choose to do what they're doing, right? They choose to sexually use a child for whatever reason, and they, you know, it's a choice. They don't have to, right? There's nobody saying, oh, you have to do that. No, they choose to do it because they want to do it, right? And so they are choosing to harm and hurt a child. And, you know, sadly enough, people think it's always this stranger danger thing. You know, parents will teach their children, oh, be careful for the strangers, you know. And, I mean, they should. But the whole issue is they don't say, now watch out for the family members, right? Because, and they should be. Because the whole issue is that 90 to 95% of abuse happens within the home. And nobody's saying, okay, now, you know, we got to be, you know, because honestly, who wants to say, okay, look out for Uncle Joe and Aunt Jane and Grandma and Grandpa, right? The whole issue is that people have got to start at appropriate age levels educating their children about good touch, bad touch, and all of this, and that they should be allowed to come to you at any time as a parent. You should let your children know that they should be allowed to come to you and tell you anything, and that they would not be in trouble, and that they should invite them to, because a lot of times parents will tell their children, you know, I don't want to hear about it. Like a child will sort of confide in the parent that something's been going on between them and somebody in the family, and the parent will just say, I don't want to hear about it, or it's your fault, or, you know, you better stop your behavior, blaming the child and not getting that child any help, right? And that's sad, but it's true. And it can happen, and that's what happened in my case. So, you know, you have to let your children know that you care and that you're there for them, and if they need to talk to you about anything, even if somebody tells them not to tell you, right? Because most abusers will tell children, especially child sexual abusers, will, you know, tell the child not to tell the parents because, you know, then they'll be in trouble, and then their mommy and daddy won't love them anymore, or, you know, the parent won't love them anymore, and that they'll be removed from the home, and they'll cause the ruination of the family and all this, right? And so the children just won't tell, or they'll threaten to hurt they'll threaten to hurt the parents, or they'll threaten to hurt the pets or the child's friends or whatever, right? They use all kinds of manipulative stuff to get the children not to tell, and so many times children won't tell. But it's good to let your children know that that they could come to you and tell you anything, and it would never be a problem, and that they should, right? Because 1 in 3 girls, count it out, you know, 3 women, or you know 6 guys, then you know at least 1 or more have been sexually abused as children. And I mean, I know so many people who were sexually abused as children. You know, it's actually very much disgusting, and it makes me angry because just out of a group of all these people that I know so many people who were abused sexually as children, and it's absolutely horrible, right? It says, vocabulary. It says the words victim and survivor are used throughout this document, but their limitations are acknowledged in that these terms may discount the aspects of a person's life that are healthy and productive, right? The term thriver is now sometimes used to describe people who are not only surviving but flourishing, right? Survivors and thrivers, right? There's lots of terms out there. I like the whole thriver thing, right? It's great. It's like people on their healing journey and they're thriving and they're doing really well. These are people who survived abuse and survived sexual abuse and are now moving on in their lives and healing, and it's a great thing, right? I mean, I know lots of people who are thrivers, right? It better reflects the idea that sexual abuse is something that happens to people and should not be considered the core of their identity. In this document, the terms victim and survivor, which are commonly used in the abuse-related literature, designate a person who has experienced sexual abuse in his or her childhood. So, I mean, lots of times, people consider themselves to be victims, and then will change their thought processes and say, well, no, I'm a survivor, right? And that was me, because I always considered myself to be a victim of abuse, right? And never thought of myself as a survivor until about 3.5 years ago when I started reaching out. And I started to realize, I started to feel differently about myself. And I thought, hey, I'm a survivor. I survived it. And that's the whole thing. It sort of was my own identity thing that I saw myself as a survivor. But people, it's just the terms that they use, right, so that people will know what they're talking about in the articles, right? Who is sexually abused? And this is these stats they list here are so old. They're from like 1991, 1990. So we're not even going to go into that. But because the stats change daily, right, because so many children are abused every single day. But the whole issue is that they know that, what they say, there was 60 million survivors of child sexual abuse in the United States alone. 60 million. That's with an M, million. That's a lot, and that's actually pathetic. But, we know that it's true. And it's underreported, so that doesn't include the people who actually stay silent their whole lives and never ever tell anyone that they were abused and sexually abused or in any other way. Right? Many people choose to remain silent, and sometimes people have to do what they have to do. You know what I mean? And if a person chooses to stay silent because that is what they feel that they must do to survive, and sometimes they have to because the abuser is still living and their lives are being threatened, and there's many reasons for it. And whatever makes a person comfortable, that's, hey, I gotta say that's fine. I myself couldn't stay silent any longer. I was sitting on the couch and I was ready to kill myself or self-injure, right, about 3.5 years ago, and it was sort of the same old regular night for me. You know what I mean? And I just, at that point, we decided to change my way of thinking and decided to win this fight and to never, ever attempt that again and to move and to actually allow myself to heal. So, but the thing is, the whole issue is that we know how hard it is on people, and I couldn't stay silent any longer. It was killing me. I said, I can't go to my grave with this. I want people to know about this, and I also want to be a voice, right? And so in order to do that, I really wanted to come out with my story, and that's fine. But lots of people choose to stay in silence, and if that's what makes them comfortable, if that's what makes the person feel that they can live through it, and they can, then hey, they got to go with what they feel keeps them alive, right? It's just so, everybody's different, right? And we have a comment in the chat room here, and it says, and if the freaking punishments were swift and uniform, it would make some people think twice. Well, that's true, because in a lot of countries, people who sexually abuse children, they get their hands chopped off and stuff like that. And it does make people think twice about abusing children, especially sexually abusing children. But we have human rights over here in North America, which I do promote. I'm all about human rights. And I think stiffer punishments are very much necessary, and I think the people that, especially these people who get caught abusing a child and then reoffend, I think those people should just be, life plus 1,000 years, right? If they're going to come back out, and reoffend and re-victim, reoffend and abuse and sexually abuse children, that's just my personal opinion. I think that they should go away for life plus 1,000 years, never get out. It's absolute. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to think maybe that all of them should just do that anyway. But it's so sad. It's so pathetic. What we have to do is get people to change their mind and realize that kids are not sex toys, and they are not, babies are not sex toys, and no child, is a sex toy for any adult, right, or any other child. And so the whole issue is that we got to get people to change the way that they feel and think about children and stop using them for their sexual purposes, for whatever it is. People say, well, it's always about control. That's not true. A lot of people are very much attracted to children, and there's a lot of sick people out there that, for whatever reason, I don't know, something's gone wrong in their brains or something, but it's sad but true. They've got this idea that they're attracted to children or whatever, and that the children want this affection. They want this attention, and they're obviously sick, right? They've got problems and they need some serious psychological help. And most of them, after vast amounts of treatment and years of treatment, reoffend. Some don't, I'm sure, and I know that's probably a fact. I bet you there's many child sexual predators who are listed as child sexual predators and pedophiles who actually go through treatment and come out and never reoffend. You know what I mean? But it's like the other people give them a bad name because there's so many that do come out and do reoffend, and it's very, very sad. Because who pays the price? See, that's why I don't care about the child sexual predators. I'm more interested in protecting children. Right, so on my shows you won't hear me talking about protecting abusers. I'm always talking about protecting children, because we need to protect children from these people. Children have no protection unless we're going to protect them. If the parents aren't protecting them, someone's got to protect these children. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't really care about the abusers, right? But I do care about the children, because they are the victims in the situation. And people have to start changing the way that they see this whole thing and realize that children have no way of protecting themselves against an adult or against another child who's overpowering them and abusing them in any way. So it's just really sick, and it's actually just very, very disturbing. It says, why do many survivors delay talking about child sexual abuse? And this is what I kind of wanted to touch on here, right? It says, in Canada, it is estimated that the vast majority of male and female sexual abuse victims do not report sexual abuse. Some survivors delay disclosure because they fear they will be threatened by their abuser, or worried they will not be believed, or that they will be blamed and possibly punished. They may feel guilty and ashamed, or want to protect their families and sometimes the perpetrator, right? Other concerns include a feeling of responsibility for the abuse and a sense of confusion and betrayal because they were physically aroused by the abuse, right? Difficulty in finding the right time to talk about the past, and an inability to recognize child sexual abuse as abusive, perhaps because they were led to believe that it was normal. Survivors should be encouraged not to confuse the abnormality of the abuse with their own identity. The abuse was abnormal, but they are perfectly normal, right? Caregivers must make themselves more aware of symptoms exhibited by both male and female survivors, and this knowledge will help families, doctors, teachers, and protective service workers to identify and report alleged sexual abuse to the proper authorities. And it's just so important that people realize it's not their fault. You know what I mean? And that's such a cliche saying, it's not your fault. But the whole issue is it's the truth. No child deserves to be abused in any way. I don't care. Hey, I'll just keep saying that until the day I die. Because you know what? That's the truth. And I'm willing to stand up and say it. I'm not ashamed to say it. No child should be abused in any way. And why are we seeing children in body bags? Because their parents killed them, stabbed them, murdered them, raped them, killed them. I mean, this is absolutely pathetic. And it's like, and no child should ever be abused and live, in fear of a parent or a caregiver who is supposed to be, the number one protector in that child's life. The number one protector. The parent and the caregiver, whoever they are, should be the one that the child should think, man, I've got security, I've got safety. My parents are here to protect me and they care about me. No child should grow up hiding under the bed, not wanting to go home, rather staying on the street, than go home because the street seems just a little bit safer than their home. This is absolutely ridiculous and sick that our society thinks, no big deal. How many children can we afford to lose? Well, 250,000. Oh, well, no big deal. No, it's a big deal because every one of these children is a human life. Every one of these children is someone like me and you, and they do not deserve to be treated that way. Just because somebody else thinks that that's okay, right? It's like, no, it's not okay, and it will never be okay. And we all need to do whatever we can to be a voice for children. We all need to know the signs and symptoms, and take a look around at the children in your own lives and make sure that they're not being abused, right? Like, know the signs and symptoms. of all the different types of abuse, whether it's physical, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and neglect, right? And then know that it's the right thing to do to report it. If you see a child that's being abused or mistreated, neglected, you do the right thing and you make the phone call. You know what I mean? Because these children do not deserve to be treated like this. And if obviously their abusers are not going to phone in and say, hi, and some of them actually do turn themselves in, especially child sexual abusers, but mainly most parents who beat their children, scald their children, rape their children, don't phone and say, oh, I want to call because I want to get my child some help because I just scalded my child and burned them and beat them and raped them and, can you come over here and bring an ambulance? Most parents actually want to hide it, right? So they do the best job they can to hide it, right, from the world, what they're doing to their children. So the families involved are quite dysfunctional, and they're not going to call and get that child some help, right? I grew up like this, so I know. And quite often the friends of the abusers, anybody who would be friends with somebody who would do this to their child obviously doesn't have good sense in their head. And so they would befriend somebody who would be hurting this child. They aren't going to be the type to get that child some help either. See, I grew up like this, so I totally know. And so no one's going to get that child some help unless we know the signs and symptoms. You take a look around at all the kids in your own children's lives, if you have children, and, they have schoolmates and people that they play with on the block. You make sure that those children around you are not being abused, and if they are, you make the phone call. Because you could save their life, or you could save them from a lifetime of hell, right? And so, you want to reach out to children. A lot of times children will not come to you and disclose that they've been abused, and there's many reasons why. So, you have to do the right thing. And if you know a survivor who's actually come to you and said, hey, I was abused as a child and this is why I'm having such a hard time, open up your heart to them. Open up your arms to them. Be a shoulder. Be an ear. And get educated on the whole issues that surround abuse. And you could be a really good friend to that person. You know what I mean? People need help. And, I tend to think more about the victims in the situation because I don't care about the abusers. You know what I mean? Like, those people make me sick because they're choosing to do what they're doing and they're causing a whole lot of people a whole lot of damage and killing children. So, I got no sympathy for those people. I really don't. But I do for the children and I do for other survivors who have been through it. They are the ones that we need to turn our attention to and get them some help, and then get the programs rolling out that will work because, hey, they know there's programs out there that do work, right? That's the whole issue. If you do some studies and you actually look around, you can find these programs that actually have worked and they've proven it. And but, they're only in one school district in one city, in one state. So they help, 80 children. They find out that it completely works. It is 100% doable, but it's only in one city in one state. So 80 children were saved from a life of abuse, which is great. But the thing is what about the nation? What about the whole North American continent? What about the United States and Canada? Why can't we get the rest of those? Why can't we get the programs out there that do work and help stop child abuse? I don't get this. I don't understand it. They're spending $105 billion with a B, $105 billion every year because of child abuse in the United States alone. And it's like, because of child abuse, not to stop and prevent child abuse. It's because of it. So why not spend $500 billion with a B, billion, and stop child abuse? All these social workers can go find another job then. I mean, too bad if they're out of a job. You know what I mean? Like, this just bothers me to no end that we are not doing something about this. We're willing to pump out every year $105 billion because of child abuse and pick up the pieces of these kids' shattered lives. You know what I mean? And so many slip through the cracks, obviously, right? But the thing is there's a few that they get to, right? And sadly enough, right, I mean, my God, why are we not combating this like anything else, like cancer, cure for cancer? You know how much, I mean, if everybody would think of child abuse like cancer, there'd be something done about it. You know what I mean? I have every bit of respect for these people out here who are working to stop cancer, too, because I have a sister who died of cancer, and I actually know all kinds of people who survived cancer actually 3 times. I know a woman that survived 3 times, cancer 3 times. She's a survivor, man. She survived it. Thing is, and I'm all for promoting that, but I'm also saying, okay, why is everybody so concerned about that? And they don't care about these poor babies lying dead at the feet of these sick monster parents out here. Right? Or lying in their cribs because they've been raped and they're just half dead. This makes me sick. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, you know what? Somebody's got to speak out about this. And we all do. We all owe it to these children out here to do this, right? It is going to take all of us not just one or two of us. There is a whole bunch of us actually, but we need everyone in on it. We need everyone's voices in on it. It is so important because these children can't wait. These children out here just can't wait. So they said here, coping skills. Many survivors develop addictions or compulsive behaviors in an effort to mask their abuse-related emotions. Survivors often experience shame about these coping skills or strategies, which they have been used to numb the pain of the abuse, right? Which they have been using, I think they meant to say, to numb the pain of the abuse, right? And that's just so true. Many times people develop these behaviors, whether it's drug abuse, alcohol abuse, or any number of compulsive behaviors they just use because of the abuse, right? To numb the pain or just to not feel it. And sometimes people self-injure just so that they can feel something, right? Similarities and differences in male and female survivors. They said every individual is unique. Therefore, the effects of child sexual abuse are not exactly the same. Although the majority of research indicates that there are more similarities than differences between male and female survivors, there are nevertheless several differences that merit mention. Although a characteristic may be identified here as male or female, it may also apply to survivors of the other sex, right? And they said that similarities between male and female survivors are that boys and girls are both more likely to be abused by someone they know, and the perpetrator is most often a heterosexual male. This perpetrator often holds some form of power and control over the victim, as is in a position of trust. And some survivors may struggle with depression, low self-esteem, self-blame, dissatisfaction with life, anxiety, dissociation, which is a splitting between the mind and body, difficulties in relationships, a tendency to be over-controlling or too submissive, an ability to trust oneself and others, problems defining health and sexuality, self-destructive behaviors, including contemplation or attempted suicide, right? Dealing with anger, stress-related illnesses, addictions, eating disorders, and acting out sexually. And, that can happen to both men and women who are survivors of abuse, right? All of that stuff. And it's absolutely horrible what it does to people. And we all know, if you've survived it, it's horrible. Predominantly female concerns. They say there's a greater chance that the abuse will take place in the home and be perpetrated by someone related to the victim. Female survivors are at greater risk of abusing alcohol. They have an increased chance of being re-victimized as teenagers and young adults. They're more likely to receive support when dealing with their recovery issues than men, and that's a fact, because many men, don't reach out, right? They say that compared with men, women tend to deal with their sadness and depression in the early stages of recovery, whereas their anger seems to surface later in the healing process. So I think that's where I'm at. Women appear to have greater difficulty recalling specific details connected to the abusive situation. And among victims of child sexual abuse, girls are fondled more often than boys, right? Predominantly male concerns, boys are more often abused by teachers, coaches, and babysitters. As a result of sexual abuse at the hand of a male perpetrator, males struggle with their sexual identity and fears of homosexuality. And men who experience child sexual abuse also find it more difficult to define their gender roles. And both male survivors and their parents are more likely to try to minimize the impact of the sexual abuse. Male survivors are more likely to use abuse drugs, right? Become involved in substance abuse. Boys are more likely to be sodomized than girls. And men are more likely to experience anger and rage in the early stages of recovery, whereas their feelings of grief tend to surface later in the healing process. It's almost the opposite of women. Men have more struggles with feelings of powerlessness, and the chances of active and violent revenge fantasies are greater. And far fewer men than women consider their early childhood sexual experiences to be sexual abuse, right? Gender socialization, different psychological responses to the sexes, and culturally determined expressions of sexuality may cause boys to be neutral or positive about their sexual experiences, but the long-term effects are negative, right? For instance, self-esteem and whatnot. So it's very, very hard on both men and women. And then they talk about stages of recovery and whatnot, and how family and friends can help, right? And a message for survivors. I would say if you're a survivor, if you've tried to get help, nothing's working, and you're just having a hard time coping, just call a crisis line. You make sure you call somebody and make sure that you do reach out and get some help, right? It's very important. No one deserves to suffer, and no one deserves to be abused. No one ever deserves to be abused. So if you're having a hard time, make sure that you reach out, and if you have to, you phone a crisis line. Phone somebody. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'll be on tomorrow morning with one child abuse survivor to another. And Going to Paso Robles, California, with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children on Friday, the 19th. So I think my shows are going to be changed because I'm going to have to switch my show times around, but we're going to try to broadcast live. Dreamcatchers for Abused Children is going to Paso Robles Film Festival, State and Fate of Children. We're going to be presenting November 22nd. That is Monday at 12 noon at the State and Fate of Children Festival, which is part of the Paso Robles Film Festival. We've been invited out by director and producer Benford Stanley. Really awesome. We're going to have a booth there and everything. So we're going to be broadcasting live at some point during the day. So be sure and check our show pages if you're interested in that. And just type into your browser, Paso Robles Film Festival. If you want to follow the festival on the internet, it'll be streaming live, and you might be able to see us there as well, because I think they'll probably stream our presentation, right? So thanks everybody so much for being here. I appreciate it. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves. You do count. You do matter. You matter to me, right? You count in my books, right? So make sure that you do stick around and get some help, right? Whatever you have to do, reach out to somebody and get some help, okay? And we'll talk to you real soon. Have a great night. Bye-bye.